Today's session, just to give a very short framing, is about resilience. As we see that in the nation states-led human rights regime is retreating, we can rely less and less on diplomatic pressures and on the more traditional ways that we have gotten used to in the last 20 years of defending human rights defenders. But at the same time, the conventional human rights protection emphasizes the protection of individual human rights defenders. It does things like sending humanitarian aid, urgent appeals to multilateral mechanisms, legal aid. It overlooks the importance of collective resilience of the communities that are involved in the same struggle. That's not to say the other parts are not important. We will miss them sorely as they are retreating. But we have, as CCC, presented a more holistic approach, we feel, to human rights cases through a system of urgent appeals where we work with communities to file these cases directly to brands, but also to governments, authorities, and employers. Today's session actually is not about what kind of mechanisms we use in these cases. Do we file an OECD complaint? Do we use the CSDDD threat? This really is about how do campaigners use these mechanisms. Because there really is a substantial difference between using these mechanisms effectively and using them ineffectively. And we believe building resilience of communities is a large part of that. AKM Nassim will start us off with giving a short presentation on what, if you go to our website, is known as the Wage Crackdown campaign. In 2023, Bangladeshi garment workers took to the streets, absolutely not for the first time, but to protest the new legal minimum wage, both the levels set far too low, and the process which, according to them and according to most people, was very flawed. What happened then was that more than 45 mass criminal cases were filed against over 40,000 workers, many of them unnamed, most of them actually unnamed. Unnamed cases and mass criminal cases are a well-known anti-organizing tactic that have a really chilling effect on workers' organizing attempts, not only on the potentially unnamed workers, but also on anybody who wants to organize. I think we have news of the organizers, if we can use our picture.
We could use our pictures.
We can use our pictures, great. So I'm handing over to Nassim to share with us the lessons he learned of this campaign, which I should say has a very successful outcome, but you can also share that.
So as you have mentioned that 45 cases were filed at that time, and when we talk about the success, we'll say that 43 of those cases have been withdrawn so far. So it's a huge success, and in between there are big stories and facts are there. So when the 2023 cases were filed against those workers, the workers were basically protesting for the new wages of the RMJ sectors, from the RMJ sector. And at that time, the wages was quite low, and there was no possibility seen at that time that the government was has any preparation to review the minimum wages of the workers at that time. So workers came out on the streets and started protest vehemently for the new minimum wages. And when that protests were held, and criminal cases were filed indiscriminately against the workers. And as Nika mentioned, that 45 cases were filed. Actually, more cases were filed, but we could manage to find the precise information of the only 45 cases. Okay, and there are maybe 2, 3, 4 or more cases are there, but we could not trace those cases. And why we could not trace those additional cases? Because there is a huge difficulties for the unions and the workers to find even the cases those were filed against them. And union was at that time was in the defensive in a sense that they were under the fear that a lot of cases will be filed against them. But at that time, what we saw that the government actually, or the employers actually deliberately didn't include the top leaders of the unions or the federation in those cases. And they anticipated that if the top leaders were implicated in those cases, then the reaction will be more from the international selectors as well as from the garment workers. So that was the tactics of the employers and government at that time. But actually, that tactics didn't work. After the cases were filed, the unions and the federations reacted immediately. They organized themselves to handle those cases to make sure that those cases are properly handled by the unions and the workers. So, and they connected with the Solidarity Center and CCC's partners in Bangladesh, and we all together came to an agreement that we will provide all possible assistance to those workers so that those cases are withdrawn without much hassle for the workers. And as I mentioned, that was a very difficult time for the workers to get information, even the precise information in our legal system. It is very difficult to get proper information from the police station where the cases were filed. So we have to send our organizers and to collect all those cases, documents, and they have to spend a lot of time, I would say that a lot of money to collect all those documents from them. And then we compiled all those documents, and we found that the number of workers implicated in those cases as unnamed workers, unnamed accused. So, and the number actually was more or less 50,000 unnamed workers in those cases. So the fear in the being unnamed accused is that police can arrest any person at any time and implicate him in a particular case. Those have been filed in the police station. So the workers were under tremendous fear of being arrested, but actually there were certain arrests taken place. More or less 30 workers or 130 workers were arrested at that time, and eventually, through our help, we and our CCC's partners, assistants, we got all those workers bail from the court, and they were released on bail for after serving some jail times. In the worst case, we have seen that a worker was kept in the jail for about 2.5 months. So we got the initial success of getting all those workers out of the jail, but the problem remains that those cases. If those cases continue, the workers will remain in those cases, and they will have to give attendance in court in many cases twice in a month. So the urgent necessity was to make sure that those cases are dropped as soon as possible, and a huge campaign was launched, and that was spearheaded by CCC, and they involved the buyers to make sure that buyers actually put pressure on their suppliers to make sure that all those cases are withdrawn as soon as possible. I would say that was a huge. If I want to single out one reason for those cases to be withdrawn in a faster way, I would say that the CCC's intervention and engaging with the brands to make sure that those cases to be withdrawn by the employers have worked well, and that was the main reason, I would say. And on the other hand, the unions were also very much involved, although union leaders were not implicated in those cases, but they took those cases in a very serious manner, and they started. They also worked locally very efficiently, I would say, and very diligently, and they also involved the local embassies like EU Commission Office, US Embassy, and the Canadian embassies were all involved in those cases. And they also put pressure on the government of Bangladesh to make sure that those cases are withdrawn. And and the CCC partners also compiled with all the cases. Those were filed against the workers, and they could compile 45 cases. I would say that maybe 2 or 3, 5 cases maybe we could not trace. And those lists were prepared by the CCC partners and sent to the government to make sure that those cases are withdrawn. And government actually used that list to make sure for the withdrawal of those cases, because our legal system is such that even the government itself, the Home Ministry even struggled to collect information from the different police stations and different courts of the country. So it was good that excellent act on the part of the unions that they could prepare a master list of the cases, and that list was used by the government to make sure that those cases are withdrawn. And as I mentioned, and as Ineka mentioned, that we have got success in 1.5 years, and most of the cases, means 43 of the 45 cases have been withdrawn so far. And actually we have the information that additional 1 case has also been withdrawn, but we haven't got the formal documents from the court yet, so that's why we are not included that case in the list. So I would say that this is a huge success for the trade unions and in their efforts to take countermeasures against those cases, and I would say that they were very much successful. And I just want to say just an additional thing, that similar cases were filed in 2016 and 2018-19 also, in 2 batches. So at that time, unions were actually not that prepared as to how to handle those cases if a large number of cases are filed. And I would say that union leaders and federations actually got a huge lessons and from their experience, past experience, and they were successful in utilizing those experience in handling the 2023 cases. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nassim. One very quick question for you. Can you say one thing about how you built resilience? Because this was clearly a very long campaign, both before the regime change and after the regime change. What, very briefly, made the workers stay that long in this struggle?
Because I would say that our trade union leaders and federations are actually very much sincere in handling those cases. It was a good thing that they took the matter very seriously, and in some cases in other sectors we have seen that if union leaders are not implicated in those cases, they do not take much serious effort in resolving this case. But in the current scenario, we have seen that the international actors like CCC and our partners, Solidarity Center's partners, actually immediately they assembled themselves and took a vow that they will take decisive actions to make sure that those cases will be withdrawn, and they will make every effort to provide assistance to the workers. So I would say that it was the sincere effort of the trade union federations and the international actors. Timely assistance have made these things happen for the workers to get relief from those cases. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Then I now want to hand it over to Johnson Leung, who will talk to us about Myanmar case, and also zoom in on how you can put the needs of the community and the impact on the community central, again, to maintain a long-time effort of support.
Thank you, Ineka, and thank you, Nassim, for starting to tell about the story of Bangladesh. We are seeing that, globally, there are increasingly repressions in different shrinking civic space and civil society, where human rights organizations are just so overburdened and overwhelmed, right? How are you going to deal with 10, 15 cases of human rights defender going into detentions when you have 2 case workers who are responsible for the regions? So I want to tell stories about and zoom into the methodologies of organizations that provide solidarity to human rights defenders that could help us in increasing and strengthening collective resilience, not just for the human rights defender side, but also on organizations, so that in a era where nation-state international human rights order are retreating, and when resources for organizations are retreating as well, we can still find power within us. Well, actually, today I was going to invite I'm from Hong Kong, obviously, I'm not from Myanmar. And initially, we were going to invite a Myanmar activist. She's brilliant, her name is Myan, and she is the leader of Solidarity Trade Union in Myanmar. And she was detained a month ago, and that is why that she's not here with us. She is still in detentions for some sum of charges. So today I'm going to step in to tell the stories. Hopefully, I could share her story thoroughly and talk about the stories about how organization and solidarity allies could support each other. My name is Johnson Yuan, and I was born and raised in Hong Kong. In the past 10 years, I have 2 identities. I am a human rights defender on democracy and freedom of expressions movement. On the other side, I'm also an NGO worker who are providing solidarity to human rights defenders. So in a way, I am I'm observing organizations that are providing solidarity on one side, and also observe how on the ground activists and human rights defenders are receiving and interacting with this solidarity they receive from international organizations. And sorry about the slides, because there was some hiccup. It should be a new slide. You can't really see them, but let me describe it to you. So the solidarity system that we are trying to build at CCC is called Urgent Appeal System. It basically works on the theory of change that in this global landscape, there are at least 3 different kinds of people. There's the human rights defenders on the ground who is carrying out their aspirations and carrying out demands and on-the-ground struggle. And then there are power holders who are not necessarily brands or governments, but activists or multi-stakeholder initiative or activist groups who are based in, say, South Korea, in Hong Kong, or in Europe, who might have some leverage over brands and company. And then you have, of course, the duty bearer, who eventually have the power to push the button and kind of change the behavior and the situations of the human rights defenders. So we run as a system that a triangle solidarity because we see there's power in 3 different sides. How we're going to make this 3 different sides of activists work together or stakeholders work together in order to make social change is basically the essence of this triangle solidarity. And in the past decades or so, a lot of human rights defenders' mechanisms are very focusing on one thing, which is the international human rights law regimes, which is enshrined and consolidated by the post-war order. And they have one limitation. They are heavily, loyally human rights mechanisms, which require very specific, very technical language of rights and mechanisms for any human rights defenders and organizations to access them. And this has actually captured a lot of energies of human rights defenders. So for instance, when I was a human rights defender, I think oftentimes, is there any NGO workers in here? Yeah, oh, no, okay. Anyway, so I think, as NGO, right, when you get in touch with an impacted community, often think the first question you will ask them is, do you have any update, right? So the human rights defenders and the impacted community are perceived in positions where they are there to provide information so that some middle persons or intermediate can package their stories and let those stories access into the human rights regime as we know, which is a very lawyerly language. And what's the problem of it? A, the evidence regimes is very high, which require a lot of energies of the human rights defenders and organizations on the ground. And B, because the process could be very slow, as we know, it also drains the energies of the human rights defenders, which might make cases less likely to be successful. So sustaining energies are difficult and a huge challenge in our work. And I want to invite all of us to think beyond the lawyerly language of human rights mechanisms. As we have listened to Nassim's stories, when it comes to power, we don't necessarily need to harness the power of the UN or human rights regimes only. We can harness the power of our community. There's so much inside our community, and in the case of union, because in the case of labor rights movement, labor rights are inherently organized, right? So they need to form community kitchens, they need to form memberships. And what we've seen in Bangladesh, in Myanmar case is the human rights defenders under threat manage to receive a lot of support by their own community and not necessarily coming from organizations that is abroad. And in the case of Myan, she was caught up in a strategic litigation, she was caught up in a slap case where a Japanese company was trying to sue her for her organizing in a factory. And she was held accountable for paying compensations of millions of US dollars, right? Imagine that. It would be a devastating situation for her. She didn't give up. The case has been dragging for 7 years, and it has only been resolved very recently. How did she endure those 7 years? She organized her community. She have, as you've seen in the pictures, a lot of people that are supporting her and sense checking with her and provide energy with her. So there are values of collective care that we can observe from Myan case, where aside from receiving human rights support from external organizations, they could also take care of very lively questions such as the livelihood of human rights defenders, educations of the kids. If the human rights defender were getting arrested, they would have some foster parents or some people to take care of the children. All of this might not necessarily change the detention situations or of the human rights defender, but it helped the human rights defenders to concern one less things, and that has already sustained, right, the energies of the human rights defender. Now, the second challenges of transnational solidarity campaigns or human rights advocacy is the external groups that are working with the impacted community. There's inherent power dynamics between them. There's the inherent power dynamic between the solidarity provider and the solidarity recipient. And the relationship is very precarious because there's often expectations disalignment. That disalignment might emerge when the human rights defenders might be on a rush and the NGOs or organizations that are supporting them are on a very different project timeline. The expectations might break down when the human rights defender sees very loud strategy as the strategies they prefer, while solidarity groups sees quiet diplomacy as a viable option. So how in the urgent appeal system that we're trying to bridge the gap and align those expectations? My tentative answer for it is we need to build relationship, stronger relationship than having a Zoom call asking what's the update for today or what's the update for the last month. And in the past few years, CC has very emphasizing on not just getting in touch with impacted community when some issue arise. Rather, there's like regular sense checking, sense making and creating space for impacted community, workers, unions, and campaigners to talk about politics or just talk about things that are not necessarily related to a specific campaign. And having that space in building relationship, as you can see, right? Sometimes we will try when we will come together, instead of having the organization providing a capacity workshop where people were giving lectures for 3 hours, why don't we just do drawing and we do like a card game so that we can align our expectation together, we can align the values that we hold on so much together that aside from working on a single campaign, we also get to know where we are coming from as an NGO worker or as a human rights defenders, and help building a stronger, relationship. As you can see, right, sometimes we even celebrate, birthday and, celebrate with human rights defenders together. And I see this relationship building part as a very essential element when crises arise, because when crises arise, everything would move so quickly. There's no time for the NGOs or the human rights defenders to get to know each other from the bottom and trying to learn about, and trying to ask the human rights defender, could you provide a fact sheet about your organizations or your movement? One has to have this kind of information and mutual understanding ready in order to make the campaign kick-started. As you have listened to Nasim's cases, the collaborations between unions and campaigners externally, that relationship started way beyond 2023. There were multiple rounds of campaigning where activists aboard and also impacted community are getting together so that they share a similar political analysis and they share similar visions where they could implement them all at once when the crisis arrives. And I will just end it with a final challenge that I've seen in this work, that opportunity don't get presence all the time. It involves flexibility and rapid response. That honey case that were going to destroy Myanmar's organization, it was dragging for 7 years. And in those 7 years, there were moments that it seems like we exhaust every arena and approaches. We did direct action, we're trying to do complaint, we're trying to do that and whatnot. And it was until last year that we saw that Japan was going to go bigger or go louder on their business and human rights approaches, that there are the right Japanese organizations who are interested in this case, that there are enough momentum on the ground as well to kick off a series of campaigns, including bringing Myan to Japan to conduct a series of workers' tour and talk, galvanizing the media. We managed to get 5,000 signatures from Japanese citizens. Some of the interviews of Myan case went viral online. And eventually, we managed to get the case dropped. So if the opportunity doesn't get presence all the time, we will need to create a space and, again, relationship building where there is shared political analysis, there's shared mutual understanding about each other's work, so that when the opportunities arise, we could kickstart. A final remark, I think this is also the strong part about CC, that all of the urgent appeal team members, they are themselves activists. They have their own activist origin. So they are the people who already embody the values and have the lived experience of what a human rights defenders feels like when they were scared, when they were worried, and when they were concerned. And we see our very significant differences in terms of trust buildings and coordination. So yeah, this is a rare, kind of like a really rare occasion, but yeah, something that I would like to share. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Johnson. I'm aware our formal time is over, but I don't see people outside the room. So for us, if there are questions, please, we are here. For you, if you wish to leave for another session or because this is official end time, please feel free. And if I see somebody knocking on the door for a next session, then we will cut it off and continue informally. Ah, you are the next session? Oh, sorry. We will,
Thank you.
I will, Suhasini, I will leave you, we will clear the space.
Thanks.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, if we can take maybe 1 or 2 questions at the most. Thank you. Thanks to friends from Fairway Foundation. Please, I see 1, 2, and then won't enter that to that session again.
Hello everyone. We know international brands have huge leverage in Bangladesh and Myanmar. What's the best way to hold them accountable without increasing risk for local workers and defenders?
Do you want to take that, Nashim?
You can go ahead, but later on I can. Okay.
Yeah, well, multiple approach, right? So we definitely need, if I understand your questions correctly, right? It requires multiple approach about, okay, we will need to have the regulations. We also need the norm setting, which set out what is the standard for the industry, what is the standards of the brands, so that we could hold them accountable. But you can see from my presentation in here that I also think that there are mechanisms that might be informal that could also strengthen the resiliencies of the workers and union, because ultimately, when it comes to the industry, whether the industry is fair or not, we have to take into account of the power, the distributions of power. And if the unions on the grounds are not organized, and if they are not united, if they don't have shared visions, and if they could not mobilize together, then the distributions of power would go to the brands, go to the ordinary power holder. Yeah.
I just want to add with Johnson that I talk about particularly of the Bangladesh case, then I would say that legal reform is very much necessary to make sure that the workers are protected from being victimized for their trade union activities. And I know that there are a lot of efforts are there if certain things happen, but we need to think these things in a proactive way, that we need to have a better law, I would say, that to make sure that the workers do not, the employers do not get the opportunity to terminate them or to victimize them in the first place. And that requires a very substantial amendments in the law. And I would say that our partners in Bangladesh, as well as the other trade union federations, national centers, are working towards that way. And we are expecting an amendment in the law soon. But so far, we have heard that all those issues are not have not been taken into consideration that seriously. But efforts are there from the worker side and the global civil society organizations to make sure that the workers are primarily legally protected from the abuse of the employers. Thank you.
Thank you. Very brief question, and I will ask only one of you to very briefly answer because we're graciously extending time. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. And thank you, the panelists, for their brief presentation. And my name is Khokon Suiten Murmu. I am representing Bangladesh Indigenous Peoples Forum. And I bestow my solidarity to the government's work of both Myanmar and Bangladesh. So actually, I want to bring up very small issues, but it may be important. Like actually, the indigenous peoples are the most vulnerable and marginalized in terms of both Bangladesh and Myanmar. And now they are come to the city to working in the garment sector, mostly in Chittagong and Dhaka in Bangladesh, Narayanganj and everywhere. So the problem arises when the migrant worker come, they faces here in many challenges in the garment sector too, as well as in back into the village. They are, more powerless, and they lose their land. When they come here, they're losing their land in the village, and when they try to establish themselves in the city, there are a lot of barriers like language barrier, culture barrier. And so I'm wondering if you have any kind of strategy for them to engage in your worker association or working for them to enhance their voice in your platform,
Okay,
as
Nazim,
well as in the national
maybe you can
platform.
say 2 words in public and then continue in
Right.
private so we can
Yes,
clear the
I
floor.
will talk to
Yeah.
him privately, of course. But I just want to say that indigenous people, I have no hesitation to admit that indigenous population of our country are quite neglected. And I just want to make sure that, just want to inform you that I was the part of the Labor Reform Commission that submitted its report in April. And we try to address this issue. At least in the workplace, we wanted to make sure that the indigenous people should have some special rights to be enjoyed when they are working in the workplace. Like when they have their festivals, they should get festival holidays. When they have particular need for any leave for any particular day, those should be considered by the government. In that way, we recommend it to the government. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks Ferrer Foundation for allowing us to take 2 questions. Thanks for my wonderful panelists and for you all for listening. Yeah.